title. Today we're going to be working on the fuel system in this 1969 Mustang. This is Project Nightshade. If you haven't been following along, there's some cool videos of some of the earlier work on how we got to this point. But this video is going to be how I got the fuel from the back of the car in the factory style tank up to the front of the car with my Holley Sniper 2 EFI system. It's all electronic fuel injection to make it modern, and I'll show you the steps it took to get to that point. As always, there'll be a lot of time lapse in it, and I'll try to condense it as much as I can. I pulled the fuel tank out in one of the previous videos, and here I'm just making an opening so that we can get that fuel pump in this metal tank. And my old Milwaukee drill was not happy about making this hole, but she's been kicking on the last leg for the last couple years, and as long as it's still got some juice, I'm gonna keep running it. The fuel pump that I'll be using is one that I found in the clearance rack out at Summit. It's a little bit long for my application, but that's something I can fix. I used a marker to mark it on what length I needed for the perfect pickup size, and then I just cut it down with a little bandsaw. That first cut I made was for the support, and here I'm just cutting down the tube for the pickup that goes to the pump. This one I'll use a razor blade just so there's no bits in the fuel system. Once everything's trimmed up, I can reattach it, and everything's held together with just some hose clamps. There's some small fuel injection style ones on the top there, and for the actual pump, it is a big band clamp that you see here. Now, I'm not sure if these typically come with fittings or ports on them, but the one I got on the clearance rack did not. So what you see here are some 8AN fittings that I'm sealing up with some Permatex sealant. And then we're onto the sending unit. I got my two holes drilled. This one here is actually going to be a clamp style. So the way this works is as you tighten this down, these rotate out. And when they rotate out, it draws them in and it clamps down on the perimeter. Now this EFI unit I got was on the Summit clearance rack, so it was already installed and somebody kept the gasket. So I don't have a gasket, and I imagine that's why they left this gap here. But there's almost a 1/4 inch gap where this won't pull tight to the tank. I am going to RTV this, and I probably could get away with just putting RTV on it, right stuff, dropping it in there, not even securing it, but it'd make me feel better if it's clamped. So what I'm going to do is put this in the milling machine, take a little bit off of this so it can draw up farther, and get a good clamp on this metal. With all of those machined down, I could insert the screws and lay out my mounting surface for the sending unit. And after a quick layer of Right Stuff by Permatex, I've got a real nice gasket, and I put it on both surfaces, allowing me to drop it down in the tank. eBay for a couple of bucks had a nice block off plate. It looks like the top of a can for the old sending unit. That way that could be sealed up real nice. And then the tank's in the car. Now I worked from the back of the car to the front, and I needed 2 holes right here, one for the feed and one for the return. With the grommets in place and a little bit of sealant, I could start mounting the lines and permanently mount this filter that I put in that goes between the pump and the throttle body. Now I jumped the gun a bit and ran the fuel lines through the tunnel when I initially ran these, and I had to backtrack. I ended up finalizing it, running it through the apron here, and then bringing it up through the side of the inner fender. This is a lot safer than trying to run it through the tunnel in case I ever have an issue with that clutch or that flywheel coming apart. It's not going to cut that fuel line and just have a pressure washer throwing fuel in the front of the motor. I had to do a bit of trimming and some drilling here for the mounting of the fuel pressure regulator, and that valve cover was in the way, so I pulled the valve cover and laid a little plastic out, and then I could drill my holes and install my rib nuts. I got away with making a lot of the fuel lines on the vise in my workbench, but some of these just had to be built in the car. This was a prime example. I just had enough room with those holes and those grommets to feed the hose through without any couplings. So this is a pretty permanent mount, and I simply made the lines once they were passed through that inner fender. I tried something different that I've never done here. Most of the mounting on this, I actually riveted clamps, and I've got a short video if you look through my video shorts describing the process, but it's one end already up there riveted, so I could simply put the fuel line up and then use Allen keys to put a bolt in and secure everything in place. The EFI system that I chose is the Holley Sniper 2, and they rate this for 650 horsepower naturally aspirated, which is well above the 575 target I've got on my motor. But I had to make a dual feed rail using a T and a 90-degree fitting. And then here I'm final mounting that throttle body, and that contraption I put in that connects to the throttle is a double return spring. A lot of rules require this if you're going to be racing the car, and it's not a bad idea just for safety in case something happens. You're guaranteed that that throttle is going to close back and not try to run away on you. Now I never made a video of how I mounted this radiator, but I just made a couple of custom brackets and mounted it right to the core support. This is an aftermarket setup, obviously. And right here I am putting in the boots for the spark plugs. All of these got insulators, and they're all the ones that are noise resistant, so they shouldn't interfere with that EFI Sniper 2 unit that I've got on the top of the motor. That's pretty well going to wrap it up. Here's just a recap of the whole system. I've got my pump, which is mounted in the tank, and a sending unit in front of it. There's 3 lines that come out of the pump. The first one here goes into a 10 micron filter that filters it before the sniper. And then the one on the end is a return line, and the third line is a vent that I've dumped just above the rear axle. Up here in the front of the car, this is the fuel feed that comes from that pump, and it goes into my fuel pressure regulator, and that reduces the pressure down to about 60 psi. Now that 60 psi travels through the reducer into the fuel rail that we made earlier, and then ultimately feeds this sniper unit. Any additional flow that comes out of this fuel pressure regulator goes right back to the tank. And this is a little bit smaller line, and it doesn't have to be braided because this should never see any pressure on it. I did have to use a couple of adapters from the factory. These are 6 AN. I had to step it up to 8 to meet my horsepower needs. This feed rail on the side gives it a real nostalgic look, like a traditional carb, but I still get all of the behavior of this electronic fuel injection and the tunability of it. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.